Good. Well, Howard, it's all yours. And Kathy.
Wow, that was fast. I didn't expect that. Okay, hun, you first. Introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Cathy, alcoholic addict. Thank you for the invitation, Terry. Good to see you out working there. Thanks, Bobby, for your service. Thanks everyone for coming tonight. If you see few people in the meeting room with us, so it's lovely to see you guys. Not really hard. I'm an addict as well.
Sure. My name is Howard Eber, and I am an addict. It is great to be here. Um, Terry has asked us to talk about relationships, especially in our relationship, especially in context with two wives. There's an abundance of information in two wives. There's a lot of do nots and there's a lot of do's. Um, Unfortunately, if we were to really look into two wives, Bill is assuming that the husband is a fragile child and should be treated as such. And while I'd like to say that's the way we approach our relationships, it's not it at all. That we're not the fragile child, but we're gonna take things out of context. We're gonna take things that are said in the book because in Two Wives, Bill is really filled with directions for the wife. Don't reform, don't complain, don't this and don't that. And it's all over the place. So we're going to take a look at some of those don'ts and see how they apply to our relationship, what our experience is with some of those situations. Um, so let's start. If you got your book, get out Two Wives. Um, and again, what we're looking to do is to talk about um, how to disagree, how to agree, how to preserve harmony in your relationship. And that's what we're talking about is how have we attempted to do that? What are some of the mistakes we've made? What are some of the ideals, the goals that we strive for? Um, Let me start with where did we say we were going to start? On page 111, I think, right?
I believe 108,
108.
paragraph 2.
Oh, yeah, 108. On page 108, it tells us um, if you look at the second paragraph, try not to condemn. So it tells us don't condemn. If I'm condemning, I'm judging. I'm sitting in judgment of somebody, and that's always a problem. So maybe we could talk a little bit about that, about how when we're in situations where we find ourselves judging one another. Um, did you have some thoughts on that?
Well, actually, I was going to do a backup of like how this all came about.
Okay, yeah, let's do that. Sure.
Do you want to give the lowdown?
No,
Well,
it's all up to you.
so we met online, and in the whole pandemic thing, and so we're married what 2 years now?
Hmm.
We'll be 3 in November,
Yep.
and so I came to one of Howard's workshops. And I totally was so interested in this man. I needed to know more about him. And that was really how it all started. And Howard came over 2 times to Ireland and he proposed to me, which was a very weird thing. How it happened. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, I think it's more you proposed to me at the time.
Well, if you know, I'm an alcoholic,
Yes.
I'm an addict. When I want something, I always get something.
Yeah.
And that's changed. But you had slipped a ring on my
The ring.
finger,
Yeah.
and it was my wedding ring finger. And I said to him, "Do you know what you've just done?" And he said, "Yes, I do know." And like then from there on, then
Yeah.
we
It was a pinky ring I was wearing that was my grandfather's wedding band. And Cathy took it off my pinky, and I grabbed it and put it on her finger and said she can have it. And that's when Cathy said, "Do you realize the significance of the finger you put it on?" Yeah, I did. I did it deliberately. So that was my way of avoiding those words, will you marry me? But that was the proposal. Cathy was a little bit more bold than I because she put it in words a few days later and asked me. So actually, we proposed to one another.
And here we are, like a year later, or well, it took us a year to do long distance, and that was really difficult. Um, but we got through what we need to get through, and here we are. So that's a little bit of lowdown. But we're on page, as you said, Howard 108. Try not to condemn your alcoholic husband. So yeah, like try to condemn means not to judge. And personally, I'm eight, coming up in 9 years sober clean. And I had never been in a sober relationship. I had been in like kind of like, boy meets girl and Alcoholic Anonymous campus, but it was never physical. I never got into physical per se. So there was a lot of like self-seeking stuff going on when I was early sober. But I had never got into a relationship sober, and I didn't think that was really, it wasn't on my radar. And so when we got together, all was great. All was a love story from the get-go. Even though it was long distance, even when he came to visit, it was all a love story. Um and and when I moved to Florida, things started to change for me and Harold.
Mhm.
The honeymoon phase, quote unquote, was over. And I remember I used to have this sponsor say to me, Cathy, if you want to know about your character defects, get into another relationship. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. And so when I got with Howard, when that time changed from the honeymoon period to the like, this is reality, all I could see was that judgment in Howard. And what that helped me to do was go to the solution, which is a 10 step. And that is my solution today for my judgment. I am nor the person I was when we met and I moved here to I am now. And and what I know today is when I see that in Howard, that makes for disharmony, disunity. And that is also a highlight to me, not the first thought maybe, but that I am sick. When I'm looking outside of myself and judging him, I'm the one that's sick. Yeah.
Mhm.
So that's really pretty much what I have to say on that.
Yeah, it's what I wanted to get to next really kind of backs that up. If we go to page 111, there are four references on that page that I want to draw your attention to. The first one is on the first line. It says, "Don't be angry." Be doesn't say don't get angry. You're going to get angry. But it says not to walk around with that chip on your shoulder all the time. So it's telling us don't be angry. Further on in the next paragraph, it says don't tell the other one what they must do.
Mhm.
Further on the page, down towards the bottom, I'm sorry, I'm skipping one.
No, you're
Oh
good.
yeah, don't, middle of the third paragraph begins with be determined. 3 lines up from the bottom, it says, don't set your heart on reforming. So don't try and change the other person. And at the bottom, 3, 4 lines up from the bottom, be sure you're not critical. Build them up, don't tear them down. So all of this page has a lot of things along those lines of don't be angry, don't tell the partner what they should do, don't try and change them, and don't be critical. And they're all tied in together. Um, did you want to have anything on that?
You share on that and I'll go after.
It's very often when we disagree, it's because we have a different way of doing things. And part of the challenge of the marriage is to acclimate to the other person. For example, um, I could use a couple of dishes and put them in the sink and leave them there till Christmas, maybe. Just leave them in the sink. And that bothers Cathy. I don't know why, but it does. Her point of irritation is very low on that. It's like as soon as those dishes hit the metal of the sink, she could be in another city and she'll hear that the dishes are sitting in the sink. So what do? I wash them. I don't leave them sitting in the sink anymore because I know that's a point of irritation in all seriousness. So I don't leave them sitting in the sink. I wash them. And what do I do next? I put them in a draining tray. And the problem is that's also a point of irritation because the way Cathy does things is washes them, dries them, puts them away. And that's a great example because to me, I will always remember washing it, getting it out of the sink. But I have a tendency to leave it sitting in the draining tray with the intention of coming back to dry it and put it away. But I don't always do that. And it comes down to Cathy feeling you haven't completed the job. And my feeling is, I washed the dish. It's not in the sink anymore. What more do you want?
Yeah, and like that may seem like a really trivial example, but that's one of the examples. That's one of the evil, like taken out of context, evil threads that goes through this is my, um, my, how would I say it? Like
Habits?
quote unquote habits. Yeah. And I think of the third column, like when we do inventory, like when I came here, my self-esteem had an old idea that I had to be this certain way. And like I said, like I was by myself. I was not with someone before this, but I thought a woman does this. I thought a woman needs to be like this for a man. So I had old ideas about my self-esteem and how if I didn't live up to this, that I was going to be some kind of a failure. And so all my character defects were on display. Let me just be frank about it. And actually, when I came here, like things got more hairier than they had been when we were long distance. And and like what I can say about these four sentences is like, you know, all of this has been in hindsight. Like I'm talking about character defects, like they were glaring and I was acting on them, but I needed to act on them in order to change to be the person I am today. It was true experience, unfortunately, painful experience that I needed to do that because all I was seeing was I was critical of him. I was not putting myself in his place. I couldn't even put myself in his place. I needed to do a 10 step from my sponsor to say, is it possible that this could feel like this for the other person? And this is just showing the extent of my selfishness and my self-centeredness because every relationship I've ever had out there has been about what I can get. And also it's been a transaction.
Hmm.
So, I don't see humans as humans. I see them as a means to an end. And that's how I live my life. And you put me in with this good man, and I just am that tornado, but needless to say, that has all changed. And it's through acting on those defects, it's through making amends, and it's through change that I am not like that today. Um Were we going to talk about that there about the consent? No.
Well, you know, by way of background, Cathy mentioned it in the beginning, so maybe in context of what we're talking about here, it's relevant to point out, besides being in different countries, when Cathy and I met, this was complete shutdown, was COVID, and the only way we communicated was through FaceTime and seeing each other at meetings. And when it got lifted and I went to Ireland, there are other glaring differences. For example, the obvious. I'm 73 years old.
I think I'm turning 37 this year.
Yeah, there's a big difference. Our the our culture has been different. Our upbringing couldn't be any more different. I'm Jewish. I don't practice. That's because I've got it down. I don't have to practice it anymore. And Cathy comes from a Catholic background, neither of which were binding on us, but it's still a different background. And we share a lot of different experiences. You know, to me, I followed the Allman Brothers around the United States, same way people follow the dead. I was an Allman Brothers nut, still am. Cathy's never even heard of the Allman Brothers. And unfortunately, they don't exist anymore, so I can't introduce her to it live. And that's what the Allman Brothers are all about. You could listen to all the records you want, but if you haven't experienced it live, it's just not the same. So that's a big part of the culture that we don't share. We have different interests in that I could spend the afternoon watching TV and doing very little else. Since Cathy moved in, I don't think that TV, aside from sometimes at night, the TV is never on because that just isn't that important. I've seen this is the way she does things, and what's the big deal? Do I need to sit in front of the TV all day? It's just there are other things, other important things to do. So we come from a lot of different backgrounds. Um, but I think the one thing we share is an enormous love and respect that transcends all of the differences.
And I don't know if it's because you're a little bit older in the spiritual kindergarten, like you're like over 15 years sober, and I'm only 9. I'm not saying only, but I don't know if it's that you've more spiritual progress or the fact that we're just different personas. Like I'm a wee bit more neurodivergent and you're not as literate. I don't know, but it doesn't matter. But I'm just saying that like we're completely, opposites. And yeah, but this thing does work. Like this, yeah, we'll get to that.
Yeah. And getting back to what we were talking about, Cathy was mentioning, and I think I alluded to also, that when we're critical, we're very much, it's a mirror. We're seeing ourselves, and it reminds me of the spiritual axiom. We have only one spiritual axiom in recovery. If you're not familiar with it, it's on page 90 of the 12 and 12. It's the one spiritual axiom we have. An axiom, it is just something that's true. And that truism is that it is a spiritual axiom that every time we're disturbed, no matter what the cause, there's something wrong with me. So that if I'm honing in on something that Cathy's doing that irritates me, that bothers me, I have to look at, well, don't I do that? Don't I do things like that? Maybe not that exact same thing, but it still comes down to it's all of those knits that you pick. The knit that I pick is a different knit that she'll pick. But we have to look at the fact that we're still nitpicking about things that we do.
Yeah, absolutely. Like for me, like inventory, but to see like, in our second column in inventory, I'm sure everyone knows this. It's like, oh God, Howard did this. Like he's always on that desktop. He's always taking calls. Where's the Cathy time? It's like, oh, okay. Have I done these things, right? I have double standards and I don't even see it. Like, so if I think he's sick, perhaps I'm sick. And like, yeah, and it's been such, I remember there was one time like we are trying to get the schedule matching and I was like upset about how, you know, um how this like where's our time together, kind of thing. And you do this and you do that, Howard. And like I remember Howard would always say, why is this always about me, Cathy? And I was like, well, aren't you the problem? Like, in my mind. But after it, I had that realization, what you're saying to him about him putting appointments in and not coming to you first, you do that all the time. Duh. Like, and I had that realization, like, I'm doing that. And it's like what I did at the start, and like I could fall into at any time is like I made this person I met. There was this kind of like hierarchy in this like he was up there and I was down there. And I didn't know this until I did inventory and seen how I had separated us, and like I would make him God. And then Howard, you're not acting the way I want. So I just throw him out of the God chair. And now I'm in the God chair to fix and change him. Like that's all I wanted to do was if you were different and did the dishes the way I want them, then my life would be fabulous. But human powers are crap higher powers. Like, and that is just yeah, it's manipulation as well. But I had to see that through inventory. So I have fell on the like not being critical. Again, you not so much.
Well, you're describing what we just read. Don't set your heart on reforming.
Right.
Don't try and change the other person. The things that are different about us, at least for me, are the things that I fell in love with Cathy. That I'm not looking at a mirror image of me or anybody I ever met. This was a completely different person. And why would I want to change that person to be more like me? When what I fell in love with was her. All of those things, whether you want to call them quirks or whatever, it's her. This is Cathy. This is Howard. And Cathy's trying to change Howard, and Howard's trying to change Cathy. And we had to realize that that's a mistake, that we need to respect the differences and try at the same time respect that, okay, I could make this little change. If it makes her happy, why not? What's the big deal? Take an extra couple of seconds and dry that dish and put it away. What does it really cost me?
Yeah,
Right?
and like if anything, the only way that is like the only way, you know, it talks about in the book, like this spiritual life is not a theory. The only way this would be as it is today is through those mistakes and through those pains, like, and through those, like, I can't believe you said that, like, through that, like, because I had to go and look at myself, and I'll get to that. Like, I had to look at this person and not Howard. So once again, I'm sick when I'm looking at Howard. I can't see Cathy. So through pain, I had to be brought to that pain. It was either like, you're going to do this inventory and you're going to change, or you're not. Like, and like, I chose what I chose. Like, but that's why, you know, my defects, my acting out and all those things, I needed to, I believe, go through that, because it's not a theory, it's not a handbook, just like our big book. Like, you make a mistake, you know what to do, and then you go make another mistake, you know, but that's made us stronger, you know? So
Yep.
I'm on a tangent. So let's,
No. That's right in line with what we're talking about. Let's jump to page 116 on the third line. Bill says, be careful not to be resentful. Could be one of the toughest things in a relationship is resentment. It's the number one offender, because when we get angry, the first thing that comes up is, you always do this. You did it yesterday. You did it last week. It's dragging up the past. It's getting out the camera. And here, you always do that. And I'm going to tie that into, where is it that,
117.
is it
Read the
117?
last sentence.
Yes, I'm sorry. At the bottom of page 117. Top of 116, don't be resentful. And here's why. Because when I'm resentful, look at the bottom of page 117. It says, don't disagree in a resentful, critical manner. When I'm being resentful, that's when the arguments get real out of hand. Now, Bill is in this book not telling us to not disagree. He's recognizing in relationships, you're going to have disagreement.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't say not to disagree. It tells us how to disagree. And that's so important. When I do this chapter in the workshop, I spend a lot of time on that. When you have to disagree, and it can get ugly sometimes, it gets ugly because we're throwing in the past and we're criticizing. It's not about what you did. It's about what you always do, and you're always like that. And that is not the least bit helpful. If we could focus on just this thing, maybe we could calmly say, we just see things differently. It's not as simple. And I used to think we could do this. I could say, you know what, you have a right to be wrong. I'm still judging. I'm still
throw
judging.
gasoline on the fire.
Right. I have to turn it around and say, I'm often wrong. Who am I to say what is right and what is wrong? What is right and comfortable for me may not be right and comfortable for Cathy. And I can't criticize the things she does. And I can't, well, look, you did this, you're doing it again. You did it then, and you did it then, and you did it then. It's just, it's poison.
Yeah. Be careful not to be resentful. Yeah, like as hard as taught me, like to be something is a state of, it's in a state. So if I'm being calm, it's a state of being. But if I'm being resentful, it's a state of being resentful, being angry. And have I been resentful? Absolutely. um, and it says just be careful in 117, just to disagree and resentful, not to disagree in a resentful and critical spirit. And have I did that? Absolutely. Again, Howard's more advanced than me. That's just let's just get straight about that, Howard. And what I learned through inventory and going back through this process again was what there was something I wasn't doing when I would get resentful. And when things were coming to a disagreement, and that using of that word always was what I wasn't doing was I wasn't communicating, because I'm the kind of addict alcoholic. I either like give you it all or I give you nothing. I don't know how to have a average conversation about, hey, I'm upset you didn't let me know about this. Can you like communicate with me here on this? I don't know how to do that. I sit and I seize and I build and I build, and what comes out is whoop, in a big explosion. That's different today, but that's only through inventory.
Yeah. You know, it says a few lines above that where it says, be careful not to disagree in a resentful manner. A few lines before it, it says, never forget that resentment is a deadly hazard to an alcoholic. It's a deadly hazard to a partner, period. Now, for what it's worth, I do like to point out the top of the page. It says, be helpful to your husband, and that God will show you how to do that. I don't think that's the objective here. Being helpful to your partner is the answer. You know, go ahead.
No, sorry. Do you know, like I'm thinking of things when you're sharing, and then when it's coming to me to talk, I'm forgetting them. So I maybe will make it a wee bit more of a conversation. And if I step on your toes, you'll step back and tell me back up. Um, yeah, I never, ever, 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 until I came into this marriage and this relationship, and then every time I wouldn't be happy about, whatever the case is, inventory. I never knew that a relationship wasn't really so much about me. It was about what I could take to that relationship. Never knew it until here I am in it. I thought I had the right job, the right interests, like what's in it for me. Never did I think about you're being put together maybe by this universal force to grow in spiritual progress together, and God's right in between it. How can you make his day better? How can you contribute to his life? How can you build him up? Right? Because I always want to like MO is to tear down. I got to see where you're wrong. And like today, I know that's exactly what this is about. Like this is a walk home with God in the middle. You know, that's all I got to say on that.
You know, in the middle of the page, it points out, actually not the middle, it's a little above the middle. The paragraph begins, if you and your husband find, about 3 lines down, it says, but all problems will not be solved at once. That whatever those differences are, let me just change the view here so I could see a little bit better. Okay. They're not going to be solved at once. But there's another point after that. Let me read this. Seed has started to sprout in new soil, but growth has only begun. In spite of your newfound happiness, there will be ups and downs. Many of the old problems will still be with you. This is how it should be.
Wow.
And I think that last line is the most important one. This is how it should be. We need differences. We need that adversity. And one time in the workshop when we were reading this, somebody pointed something out that I'm going to pass along to you. If you're familiar with a biosphere, and for those of you who are not, let me just grab this. Let me share the screen for a minute. Show you what we're talking about here. Biosphere is a closed, a sealed environment where nothing gets out, nothing gets in. It's all sealed. But it's one of the problems with biospheres, and the reason why I bring this up is in with biospheres, there's problems with trees, that trees have a tendency to fall over. And the reason why they fall over, let me get rid of this. I don't need to keep that up anymore. The reason why they fall over is they grow in the direction that the roots are growing. And there's no adversity, there's no wind. The tree needs wind. Trees need wind to strengthen the roots so that they don't fall over. They don't continue to fall in the direction that they're in. We need to have resistance to grow. And somehow that just feeds the relationship. That difference just makes us stronger, makes us more open. Being rigid and set in our ways is contempt prior to investigation.
Absolutely. And like what comes to mind is I don't know if you remember that season, I don't know what year it was. You'd swear we were like 50 years married. But I remember there was a season in our marriage where we were contemplating like this is not going to work. We were contemplating separation. And it was a lot of push and pull. Well, on my behalf anyway. A lot of like, I'm gonna sleep in the spare room literally tonight. Um, and like I'd actually went back and like even went as far as asking my lawyer, like, what can I do about the situation I'm in? And I was trying to be open with my family and stuff like that. And here I am in a different country, no family, no whatever, around here in Florida. And like this man has just laid down the royal carpet for me, like, and we're not working out. What am I going to do? Like, what is going on? Like, and I was more resentful as time went on. I didn't have a solution. And I met my current sponsor and she told me like let's go and do a 4 through 9. And I went back and I did a 4 through 9, and it was all things that started to come out with first of all, let me back up and say it was all these kinds of things like, well, I'm never gonna get to do the things that someone like a 37-year-old would do. Like I'm never going to get to go on a safari. Like I don't know if we have the right, things lined up in our life. He wants this and I want that. Like all this materialistic stuff. That's what it started to come down to. And I went through that inventory and I had seen and sound sex ideals before this and I changed them twice in our marriage because one wasn't working. So I changed the other in the midst of when we were in that kind of season. And when I did it this time round, and I did that resentment on hard, and I did the seeing and sound sex ideal on hard, and through inventory, everything changed in my life and in our relationship. And I told my sponsor before this talk is dedicated to you because I would not know if I would be married today only for that. Like you guys could have been coming and looking in the shades, like, and you wouldn't believe. Like I'm being very transparent here because I don't believe in like not being transparent. So, you know, like through that inventory, this gave me a new scene and sound sex idea that I dedicate every day to. I was praying it, but prayer for me, what would happen was I would pray it and I would come and I would be seeing Cathy showing up to Howard. For example, like, come on, it shouldn't take us 20 minutes to get our shoes and get out of here. Like, I'm like militant, chop, chop, let's go. Howard's like, easy going. And so I'd always be doing things like that. Same with the dishes. And I couldn't stop myself, and the guilt and the shame, and I wouldn't want to do it. And I was doing 10 steps and nothing was changing until I started to meditate the scene and sound sex ideal every day. Everything changed. I didn't have to remember to mind my manners or mind my lines when I would come into Howard. I changed on the inside. And today I don't rush Howard. Today, part of my scene and sound sex ideal is I give Howard the dignity and respect to do things in his own time. That's completely lifted. It doesn't come into the equation. And that is what saved our marriage. Not the qualities of the things wrote on paper, but the person that's doing all the heavy lifting for us in this meeting, which is this power that I'll never understand. Like, this power has to be in the middle of these two humans, period, for me. So yeah, that's all.
Yeah, Cathy and I are like to listen to a lot of mentors, and one of the mentors we listen to is Mark Houston. And if you're familiar with Mark Houston, he at 9 years sobriety, and going around talking about sobriety and teaching sobriety and all of that, he had a breakdown. He wound up in an insane asylum because he was contemplating suicide at 9 years sobriety. And when he was in the loony bin, he asked God, "What is it that I'm not doing? What part of my program am I falling short on?" And one word came to mind: meditation. And it changed his life. And when I heard that story, it happened during this time period in our relationship. And I started a deeper, more significant, meaningful regimen for meditation. And Cathy very much taught me the hows in that, because I really didn't know at being around the fellowship, and it's around the fellowship since 1983, and having as many relapses as I did. But in this current run since 2006, my idea of meditation was really inadequate, insufficient. My idea was, in the course of the day, to keep the tuner open, to catch the messages, the answers that God is sending my way. And while that's still valid, those ideals that Cathy is talking about, which for me is tolerance, compassion, patience, humility, forgiveness, love, and goodwill. Those are the things that came to me in that deeper meditation. And those are the things that continue to come to me in deeper meditation. So what are we saying here is that one of the things, some of the things that got us through that period, because that was a really dark period. I remember calling my son, who was a challenge to begin with about accepting this relationship, but he finally did, and telling him, "I think we made a mistake." That was not an easy thing to do, but that's how far it had deteriorated. And what brought it back was the application of the 12 steps. Cathy applied it the way she felt it needed to be applied, and I applied it the way I felt it. And we felt the deficiency. We treated that deficiency. And now I think our bond, our love is stronger than it's ever been.
I don't know how you put up with me. Every pimple on my arm.
Yeah,
I don't know how you put up with me.
Yeah, but that's because we use the 12 steps to get through that, to get out of that. Which brings us to a really interesting point on the next page, page 118. For a long time, I read this paragraph and thought, gee, this is like airy fairy shit. Who does this nonsense?
Yeah.
Well, we do. We do. It says, next time you have a heated discussion, and underline this, no matter what the subject, it should be the privilege of either, circle either, please, to smile.
Like this, Howard.
It may be painful. It may crack your teeth to smile, but it says to smile. So circle either, circle smile, and say, and let's underline, this is getting serious. I'm sorry I got disturbed. Let's talk about it later. Now, we have our own version of that that is close to that. Let's restart the day. Because we found that when we were saying, let's talk about it later, it really didn't get talked about later because it went away. It was usually that insignificant that it was my earth shaking, earth rattling at that moment. And it just disappeared into nothing.
Well, for you, maybe there has been times where I've been like, oh, I know if I bring this up, I'm rising contention. Like I'm not in I'm spiritually not in the beam. Like this is not going to go well. So I'm like, even when I would start the sentence, I would say, oh, wait, yeah. Let's talk about this another time. Let's circle back about this when I go and come from my walk or tomorrow. Let's talk about it tomorrow. Let's circle back. And I think that was also something that I needed to learn was not just say, let's not talk about this. This is getting heated, but to say, let's not talk about this is getting heated or whatever your own words are, but let's circle back tomorrow or in the next couple of days about it. Like, because that's a chance for both parties to have the chat because maybe the other person doesn't want it, but like you have to give the other person dignity of their experience. Like Howard is a very quiet person. He doesn't have fight. I am the queen. Like I don't mean I'm the queen. What I mean is like if we get into a disagreement and it gets heightened, I'm verbal. I go outwards. Howard goes inwards. He won't talk. So, but I've told him he's just as self-centered as me because inward is the same as outward, only you're not getting it.
No, I mean, we all respond differently. Cathy explodes. She's verbal to say the least. I don't. The angrier I get, the quieter I get, the more within I get. And that's because I've learned over the years that when I don't keep a lid on it, when I let it go, I say and do things that I immediately regret. It's like alcohol and drugs. I don't have them in my life because I don't like what they do to me. Anger is one of those also. Anger comes to rage real quickly with me, but you would never know it unless you watched and saw I'm not saying anything, I'm not doing anything, I'm not reacting. It's almost like I'm praying that it go away and it be over. Because in a sense, that is what I'm thinking. But if I let it out, inevitably there is regret. And one or two times in our relationship, that has happened. I'm a human being. I can keep that cap on only so long, or maybe the subject or the topic was that sensitive. I don't even remember what it was about, but there were one or two times that I did explode, and I don't like that person.
Yeah.
And so when I try to make it right and make amends and apologize, the thing I point out is that I became somebody I don't like to be. And the end result is the same. We show it differently. I think if we would react the same way, explosive, we wouldn't be here today.
Yeah, like, and I remember, like, at the start, like, before I went through that 4 through 9, like, everything changed for me in that last house cleaning process. But like, Howard actually came to me after I do nightly review or after I would like say something or react, and he said to me, Cathy, don't make any more amends to me. Because you know what I was doing? I couldn't follow through because I would boom, I would do it again. I would do it again. Like I told you. And that's why I needed God. That's why I needed this Scene and Sign Sex inventory. Because I was like, sorry, it's like putting band-aids on, and like doing it so I felt better. And it's not about me, it's about creating harmony in the relationship. So he got sick of the like amends, like, and yeah. To
And
the, yeah.
it's interesting you point that out because one of the things that Cathy hurls at me in these situations is that why am I the one who always makes the amends? You never make any amends.
Yeah.
But I apologize. And to me, those things are the same because I'm apologizing for becoming the person I don't want to become. I don't want to be that person. And my amends is to try and be the person that I want to be: tolerant, compassionate, patient, humble, with love and goodwill towards my fellow man. And I betray that every time I blow up. So my apology is an amends, but we just approach it differently. And Cathy is right. I got to the point where no more, because it doesn't change. And what happened was change took place. So it wasn't necessary.
Yeah, and it helped me to see that sorry is not like when you make amends, there's a verbal amends and there's also like a living through
Mhm.
amends. This is just the verbal to the other person, but you have to change, Cathy. And that's what I wasn't doing. And by doing that process, I mentioned like everything changed. And, like Howard just says, like I said that now, like I'm telling you, this is transparent. And I have said that when I've been so annoyed. And I realize that why I keep having to do that is because I keep taking the action and doing the same thing because I'm not changing. That's why I'm having to come and make these amends. So, and also today, like I can be like okay with that, like screw that. I just said that, and that was not nice. I gotta sit with it and feel how crappy I feel about myself for hurting someone I love, and then I gotta do some work on it and go and make amends. Like it's not just like a verbal thing, and I don't get like when I hurt Howard, I hurt myself, period. You know what I mean?
When Cathy and I got together, when she came here, um, I was involved to the extent where there were some weeks where I could be sharing 6 or 8 times in a week. There were days where I might be sharing at different meetings 3 times. And it was not uncommon to find ourselves in those kind of situations. And the reason I mention that is because if we look at page 119, it tells us that the partner cannot be jealous of the attention being paid to the fellowship or elsewhere. And it says at the bottom that you'll find that his excess enthusiasm will tone down if you cooperate rather than complain. And we got to the point where I actually made a commitment. I took a year off. Aside from the workshops on Sunday and Monday, I didn't turn down every offer I had, every speaking commitment for a full year.
But I remember someone would call you and they'd be like, no, but you can drive me next year. And I was like, that is not fair, Howard. You said like,
Yeah, I did book a lot of dates for the following year, but I spent that year not doing that. And that time was more spent here in our relationship, because it's not like I was hiding in those things or doing those things. I was doing those things when she met me. And to some extent, I'm still doing it, but it's tempered.
yeah.
It's tempered, and I always look towards Cathy's schedule before I make a commitment. Where is she at that given point? And if it's a little dicey, or if it requires me to go somewhere. I was invited to Great Britain and Ireland in the last few months. One time she went with me, one time she didn't. But before I accepted, we talked about it. That's the way it has to be.
Yeah. Like the jealousy of the attention you bestow to others now, like let me be very like frank about it. I was absolutely 100%. I was like, where's Cathy time? Where's Queenie and King time? Like this desktop, these workshops, these commitments, like yeah, I got it.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not cool with that. Like, I thought this was just a COVID-y thing. And actually, someone told me, a sponsor at the time says, like, this is what you're signing up for, Cathy, if you get married. Like, this is going to be part of your life. Actually, he might even travel to some countries. I say, yeah, 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 yeah. I just love him. It's all going to be fine. And And so that would cause me to act out because of my insecurity, because of my selfishness and self-centeredness. Like one of my biggest defects of characters is entitlement, and well, I have a lot of them, but it's entitlement and like and if I do this, you'll do that. Like and yeah, so I had to get really comfortable being not being uncomfortable, but taking a lot of inventory and looking at this is never Howard. Like the point of this is it's never Howard or it's Cathy. It's always Cathy. And it got me to grow and go deeper and grow with God more and grow with this person that I love. And today I'm more cooperative than I complain. I do complain for sometimes, but it's college, it's inventory for complaining. And it's changed. Like I have respect for Howard's schedule. Hey, Howard, I have this. Can we do this at this time? Blah, 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 blah. And that's okay, Cathy. I don't mind. Like, I will not make the decision until I asked him. Before, what I was doing was making decisions and expecting him to ask me about his decisions, but it was okay for me to make my decisions about commitment. Do you know what I mean? So, like, a lot has changed. And also this kind of like, where's our time? I think, we've gave up on that. Like, we don't even have date nights anymore like people do. I thought that would be good. It didn't work for me. We don't like those kinds of things I could never live up to. Like, we just can't plan things like that. But the point I'm making here was when I was looking at Howard and how insecure I was, it was also said to me, time for you to get busy, Cathy, right? Not to avoid, but what are you doing? Right? He's doing 12-step work. He's helping. Like, what are you doing? Oh, so that's just something like that there.
One of the benefits, the outcomes of that is Big Book Comes Alive has become more than just a Sunday meeting. It's become an entity that is Cathy and I, and we do things together to a great extent. We have the meeting Sunday and the Monday meeting. In short order, Cathy's going to start doing a workshop on Wednesday. It's a combination, Big Book Comes Alive and the Big Book Compendium, where I'll be there with her, but it's her lead. It's Cathy's workshop. I'm doing a workshop on Thursday under the Big Book Comes Alive and Compendium umbrella with Steve Wood. And we're planning on somewhere in the future, it keeps getting kicked down the road to do this traditions workshop. But we're thinking and doing these things together, just like we're doing here today, is that we try and keep those things together if we can and approach them. If we're not doing it together, approach them together. Is this okay? Do you mind I know I have this last night, but I'd really like to do this tonight. Whatever it is, we talk about those things and don't just go, I'm not an independent agent. And that's part of the problem is sometimes we think we're independent agents and we're not.
Well, anytime like I've been acting on my character defects or in my character defects, I obviously am because I have this sense of separation that I either have to be above you or I'm like either SHIT or I'm it. Like that was Cathy. Like and today I know that I have to be shoulder to shoulder with Howard, with you guys, because there's no unity. And if there's no, for me, if there's no unity and we're shoulder to shoulder, then there doesn't feel like there's a connection to this power. So for me, it's about equal. Like that's exactly what it's about. And I was going to say one other thing to you, but I can't. Yeah, like we are separate, but also a big part of my journey was when I came here as well. With, I really admired Howard when I met him. I still do today, but today in a different way. Like I admired him. God, he knows so much, blah, 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 blah. So I was always putting him on that pedestal. And like when we got married, I felt like I had something to live up to. Like that my self-esteem had went like this. And I was like, God, I better like sound good. I don't want to embarrass you. I had kind of come enmeshed, if that makes sense. And through inventory and through seeing things like we're separate people. And he has a dignity to his experience, and so do I. But he didn't take that. I took that on. My ego regrouped and took this like Miss Eber thing on. Like, And it's all a bunch of nonsense. Like, because as Howard would always say, Cathy, everyone can read the book, but we're not coming to hear about people reading the book at meetings. We're coming to hear about their experience with the book. And yeah, so I don't know where that was.
No, that's great. We're running close to the time here.
Yes.
So I think this might be a good place to bring this up on page 120. Bill has come off of explaining 3 different scenarios that what will happen when the husband sobers up and what could happen in the home. And the third one is the big kahuna. What happens if he comes home drunk? Now, I haven't come home drunk or high, but there have been times when my program was out the window. And further on the page, Bill gives us the answer. First of all, he says, you need not remind him of his spiritual deficiency. On the middle of paragraph 1, one that begins with perhaps your husband, 3 lines up from the bottom, you need not remind him of his spiritual deficiencies, because when that happened, that's exactly what Cathy did. And I didn't take to it too well. But the solution was at the bottom of the page. Place that problem along with everything else, and you may want to circle everything else, in God's hands. Everything else goes in God's hands. And, we've had those situations where don't be alarmed if the partner, all of a sudden, that program that they're working 24 hours a day disappears. It can happen. Don't be alarmed. Let's just work it out. And that's, we don't remind each other of our spiritual deficiencies except in the heat of anger. We have to learn to put it in God's hands and do the things that we were talking about, whether it's inventory, taking it across the columns, meditating about it, whatever works for us in terms of the program to get us back onto the page with those 12 steps. That's what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, again, it's through making the mistakes of my character defects. It's through like, okay, I've not come home drunk or high, but I've acted out in ways that I am not liking, and neither does my husband. You know what I mean? We don't have to, I don't want to say that because there might be someone new in the room, but like we can get high on anger, we can get high on gossip, whatever the thing is. But 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 I have to apply my program to it. But there's no way I can change that. Not even alone know I have it until I act out in it. And as long as I bring it to the solution, everything's going to be okay. If I didn't bring any of that to the solution, we wouldn't be here today. Actually, I don't even know, like, if Howard would have been alive. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, this is the kind of girl that just goes, you see that shelf, Howard? I'm going to take all those books off the shelf right now if you don't do this. Like, that's how much of a rager I can be. Have I did that? Unfortunately, yes. Like, you know what I mean? And like, so I don't, and then the guilt and the shame that comes with that, and like, we were talking about the remake, like we've had that where like, and I just want to tie this up with, I was always taught, like, no matter what, when sex is tough, Cathy, throw yourselves harder into work than with others. And there was times where we would get up the next morning, because hard as this thing, never go to bed angry, but that didn't mean the problem was solved. There was times where we would get up both in the morning and he would go to work with the guys and I'd go to work with the girls, and we'd connect after it to do our remake and to have a chat. It's a new day. Like, let's do this. What do you got going on? If I didn't have that, I don't know where I would be. So that is so, so true. That point in the book. And like, and yeah, like it hasn't always been a like formal amends, like the time with the books on the bookshelf. Like I broke something too, by the way. It had to, there was a grace period, and it had to be like, we did not bring that up. We just moved on the next day. Suffice to say, Howard is a very, very forgiving, very patient person. And Cathy is a toddler. Yeah. That's all I have.
Not really. Oh, um, you know, we just read where Bill tells us to place the problem along with everything else in God's hands, and it's not the first time he tells us that. If we go back to page 69 and paragraph 3, he says, in meditation, we ask God what we should do about each specific matter. Now, this is in the sex inventory, but if we take it out of context, it works in every regard. In meditation, we ask God what we should do about each specific matter. There's the prayer part of step 11, and here's the meditation. Here's the other part. The answers will come if we want it. If that's what you want, that's what you'll get. And Cathy mentioned it, and maybe it's a great place to wrap it up, is I firmly believe you don't go to bed angry. You don't. You don't go sleep in another room. You don't go to bed angry. And if only on the basis of that commitment, this has worked. This has worked. No matter what precedes it, you're not going to bed angry. I'm going to tell you I love you, and we'll work things out tomorrow. But
And
remember, I love you.
And you tuck me in, even if I'm sleeping.
Yeah. I tuck Cathy in, and if I get up to go to the bathroom during the night, every time I get up and come back to bed, I kiss her goodnight. She's sleeping most of the time, but that's what I do. I won't get into bed without doing that first. To kiss her goodnight and tell her I love you, because I do.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having
Works
us.
the 12 steps in God. You need to remake
God bless you all.
relationship.
Take care.
Good job. Thank you, Howard and Cathy. We're usually past this point in question and answer, but I'm going to throw it out there. If anybody has any questions that we want to seek an answer from Howard and Cathy, just raise your hand and I'll let you. Okay. Louisa, unmute and go.
Hi, yeah, Larissa, addict, and thanks so much, Howard and Cathy. I love you guys. I always follow you guys around. So do you guys, I know you guys were working through the two wives, but do you guys try to actively, or have you guys used the traditions in your relationship? Do you guys actively try to, I mean, I'm learning through what's his name, Joe. I'm doing this workshop with him, and he's, going through traditions and relationship. I was wondering if you guys try to practice that.
Yeah, I forget, who is it?
Oh, yeah.
Does an extraordinary presentation.
Jay.
Jay, Jay Westbrook.
Yeah.
Yeah, whenever he does that, we try and be there to glean something from it. Jay, what's his last name?
She just said, I think it's being recorded.
Westbrook, yes. No,
Oh, sorry. My bad.
But he uses it anyway, and we're among the fellowship here. So if you have an opportunity and you see that he's talking about whatever he talks about, he always comes back to that. And you're asking, do we apply that as best we can? Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't formally been brought through the traditions per se, like for relationships, but I have found like if I'm focused on practicing my program, everything's okay. Like that's just been my way. Like I don't know, but I'm always open for more.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you.
Thank
Sure
you.
is.
We always try and be teachable. I'm fascinated with that. It's how the traditions can be applied to relationships. In fact, it's funny. I was just reading this article that someone sent me about relationships and recovery and traditions. It's fascinating to me. It's a challenge. It really is a challenge to apply it because I think the steps are so much more applicable. But the traditions absolutely work because we're talking about an entity here. We're talking about something that's not me and that's not Cathy. It's us. And we have to function as an us. And that's what the traditions teach us to do.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Great question. Great question.
Any other hands? Otherwise, I always have a poignant question. How poignant it is, I don't know. But do you guys use a different slant and use Al-Anon at all when working with the relationship?
Well, yes and no. One of the daily meditations that I read is one that Cathy had given me that she got from Al-Anon. Um, I do whenever possible. There's an other fellowship, Anon, that I try and attend. Um, I don't get there as often as I'd like, but my intentions are good. And Thomas Merton says that as long as our intentions are good, that's a good sign. Um, but no, not as heavily as you might think.
Mm.
I don't think we have as much time to put into that.
I do have the books, the Al-Anon books, and I thought about that, but I went to a couple of Al-Anon meetings, but not for us, no.
No, I think what Al-Anon is about is what the 12 steps are about to us. So I think if we work on the 12 steps, we're doing what Al-Anon tells you to do is to work on yourself. Don't set your heart on changing your partner. Work on yourself. And I think we try and do that.
Yeah, that's the do's and don'ts. Now, Sarah was saying she couldn't take herself off on mute. Vicky, can you take Sarah off of mute since I lost mine? Do you know how to do that? Sarah, what happens when you try and take yourself off mute? Okay,
Sarah W.
Paulina has her hand raised. I'm going to go to Paulina. Paulina, can you take yourself off
Sarah
mute and ask
W.
a question?
Hi, thank you for this meeting. This was phenomenal, as always, Howard and Kathy. Thank you. I wanted to ask if you had any suggestions about uh, two addicts in early recovery. My sponsor's feedback has been be stupid together, and it's okay. And I'm wondering if you have anything that you can add to that.
Oh, um, can I ask, what how much time does each person have? And what is the work that those people, I assume you're talking about yourself and somebody else. Um,
Yes.
I think it comes down to where are you in recovery? When I tell my guys, and I think Cathy does the same, is if you're not in a relationship, try and get through that ninth step, or at least to that ninth step before you get into it. Because by the time you get to the ninth step, you've gotten right in all three of the basic dimensions. You have a better relationship with God as a result of one, two, and three, and you have a better relationship with yourself in four, five, six, and seven, and a better relation to mankind in eight and nine. So you have established these healthy relationships, and I think it's safe at that point. Would you agree? What do you think?
Yeah, like I don't ever tell a sponsee to like wait a year or something, like all this stuff we hear, because it's not in the book. I've had sponsees who are in relationships well before a year. And like I don't really tend to say much because I know when we get to the fourth step, which would be pretty soon, you're gonna see a lot. Like if it's a serious relationship I'm talking about. So I try to stay out of that. Like I just bring them to spiritual action. You know what I mean? So I'm not the arbiter of anyone's sex life or whatever. Inventory will usually show me more. Just the inventory. So not me about the sponsor, but me about myself. So I don't know if that's helpful, Pauline.
Awesome. Well,
I appreciate that.
yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. And Sarah's in a loud environment, so she can't unmute anyway. Do we have any other hands? Otherwise, we
If Sarah
have
wants, if Sarah would like to put it in the chat, we can read it in the chat if it's
Sarah.
possible.
Can you put it in the chat, in the general chat? Okay.
Maybe she can.
There we are. You see it?
Oh, here we go.
There it is. Sorry, unable to come up from you. Is it possible to work through relationships with one partner not in recovery and one active substance use?
So if the other person's active and I'm sober, again, I actually did inventory with a sponsee about this, not mine, hers. And inventory, I'll say it again, I have to go to inventory because like it's gonna fall back on me. Like if I am crossing an internal boundary, if I'm usually seeing someone that is in not available physically, they're using emotionally and spiritually, I'm seeing someone unavailable. So I can't expect to be like that's me. Like I have to see that about myself. If they're not available emotionally, physically, spiritually, do I really want or need to be in a relationship with that person? And inventory will show me that. So it's not about them, it's about seeing the truth in me. And like when this individual did it, she could see that, she had crossed internal boundaries, which she knew, like that little gut voice. It was like, I don't know about that. But as we do, we ignore that, some of us, like I do, until I'm brought to my knees. So it's not a like right or wrong. And with normal people as well, like there's plenty of people in the program that are married to earthlings, non-alcoholics, non-addicts. I just think it's all about looking at ourselves, and with God's help, we can change. And God will show us, like we don't have to figure this out. I don't know if that's helpful, Howard.
Yeah, I think the book is what guides us. On page 99. It says if there be divorce or separation, there be no undue haste for the couple to get together. So we can put that aside. We're not necessarily talking about that situation. But it says that one partner should fully understand the way of life of the other person, new way of life. If the old relationship is to be resumed, it must be on a better basis since the former did not work. I don't know how you can effectively work a program with a partner who's using. And so it has to come down to the last line on that page of 99, that paragraph. When the time for living together has come, it'll be apparent to both parties. Sometimes separation is the only way to deal with it. It will jeopardize your sobriety, and it will. My belief is the partner who's not using is more likely to use than the partner using is likely to get into recovery. It's just,
Yeah. And I think I read that wrong, the question. But Howard's right. But I also think, like Bobby had mentioned, there's Al-Anon, like if we're sober and maybe they're in their addiction or they've relapsed and you're married or you're together and it's not a starting thing, like, and they're not well, it's like, what can I do? Is I can go to Al-Anon, I can work my steps. Perhaps I can try to help him, like the book tells me how to help the other alcoholic if they're or addict if they're open to it. And like as Tara said, maybe like I need my time away from you until they get the help they need. So it depends on where they are. But if they're willing, and that's what we're looking at, if the person then wants help, we got a solution.
yeah,
It will absolutely 100% can be
yeah.
worked through.
And you'll find it on page 96 and page 99 about how to deal with that. I hope that helps. Sorry, Sarah, you can't respond, but
I'll always have another time, but when you're 99, I love that because you go to the next. I don't even have it in front. I do have it in front of me. I'm not looking at it. This is let no man say he has to get his family back or his relationship back to be able to stay sober. And
right.
It's the only part in a meeting I go to. Every 18 months I get to share. That's the only thing I share because of experience. But I'm going to send you guys pictures because you were talking on all the things you were talking on. I don't know. I don't think there's other people. I have everything circled already and underlined. So it's like, oh, I don't know. It's my sponsor says if I say anything besides it's God, I get in trouble. I can't use serendipity or synchronicity and things. So that was awesome. We've got a soft stop at I was going to say 4:15, but at 6:15. And then after that is a parking lot. this isn't in the script, but Howard and Kathy, do you want to finish up with any closing comments and take us out in a prayer of your choice?
Jeez.
Let's do a prayer of your choice. I'm zippit pippet. I'm good. Thank you for having us.
Yeah. How do we take it out? To Serenity Prayer?
Yeah.
Okay, all unmute. I lost my power of unmuting. If you can't, then it'll be Howard, Kathy, and I, and Vicky, and Linda, and Paulina. Some people are unmuted. You guys go.
God,
God.
us the
Serenity.
serenity
Serenity,
things
accept the things we cannot change, courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Aw.
That was
Thank
awesome.
you.
Thank you.
That was
Thank
awesome.
you. Take
Pew,
care.
pew,
Thank
pew.
you.
Pew,
Pew,
pew.
pew, pew.
Thanks, Terry.
All right. Thanks,
Terry
Thanks,
guys.
comes in with his
guys.
pew
Look at
pew
this.
See
pew.
you
That's
later.
easy, Terry.
That was great,
See you
guys. Thank
later.
you.
Yeah, Howard, I'm gonna send you guys a text later. What I was sending earlier. It's beyond my
I'll,
wild expectations.
I'll
Really good.
I'll get you guys the recording probably tonight or tomorrow.
Okay.
No rush.
Thank you so
No
much.
rush.
No problem.
Thank you. Thank you.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
That was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
Didn't end with having to call the attorney, so I think that went well.
Like I'm like this is like I'm like thinking I'm in confession. I'm thinking, God, they must think I'm confession. I'm like, no, it's not confession.
It's
No.
funny about the attorney in every country I went to. I'd say, learn three things: how to say thank you, you have pretty eyes, and I need an attorney. It worked well. Okay. I have another meeting to hop to, so I can't
Okay.
keep the parking lot open.
No, we're going to bounce.
Hi, guys.
Thank you
Okay,
all.
bounce.
Know how to reach
Bouncing
us.
bounce. Awesome job.
Have a good day, guys.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
The workshop.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.